Well, I think the closest I came to a nickname was just Glow.
And why is that?
It's short for Gloria.
Okay, so where were you born?
I was born in Price, Utah in 1927.
So that makes you
82.
Okay. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I am the youngest of four girls. My oldest sister is Mildred. My next one is Janelle, and the last one was Irene. My mother's name was Esther Samhills, and my father's name was Ellis Wiley Maurer. If I remember right, I was born kind of at the end of the Depression, and Dad did a few things, but then he got on the Provo police force, and that made his career.
Did you know your grandparents?
My mother's family lived in Fountain Green. They helped settle Fountain Green. And I remember Grandma vaguely when we would go down and visit, but it was too far to travel at that time, and I didn't get to know her very well. And the one thing that sticks into my mind was that they had adopted an Indian girl, and those old braves, they kept coming back to get her back. And once they knew that they were coming, the girl ran downstairs and got up on a table that they used to separate milk. And she got up there, and there was water on the floor, and that old brave wasn't going to get his feet wet. And he sat there and waited, and finally he just gave up and left. Well, it's kind of a funny one. We had a little dog. We called him Main Toy. And if that dog got a chance, he would follow you. He'd get behind, you'd go down this way, and he'd get behind the homes and go down this way. So then you had to take him back and tie him up or put him in the yard or whatever. I went to elementary school in Mazer, and that building is still there, but it has been turned, I think, into a rest home or something. It's still where I went to school. We played hopscotch, and we played jacks, and we skipped the rope, and as a matter of fact, they were just introducing the maypole here. I don't know whether you know what that is or not. Everybody gets a string, and then you go in and out, and you wind it around this big pole, and that was winding the maypole, and that we did every spring in the play yard.
Who were your friends at that time?
Well, the one that sticks out was Mildred Miller. She lived across the street from the school. And they've all gone. Everybody went in a different direction.
What was your favorite toy and why?
Do you know, I guess it was a doll. And you just learned how to mother.
What did you do during your summer breaks?
As little as possible.
Did you go on any trips with your parents or?
No, we didn't have a car for a long time. But we would go up the canyon and have a picnic. And that was out at the end of the world anyway at that time.
Were you happy as a young child?
I didn't see any reason to be anything else. I was content.
What would you say about your relationship with your parents?
Well, they both worked very hard. Mother worked at the state mental hospital, and she was a hard worker. Do you know, I went to the Provo High School. I don't remember the date I graduated.
So, what were your academic grades?
Dallas, that's the one thing I regret most. I was not a good student, and I regretted it my whole life. I have.
So who were your best friends during that time? And do you still associate with them?
Well, Mildred Miller kind of drifted up with me, but we didn't stay close. I moved, of course, later on after I was married, I moved back east to Greenwich, Connecticut. And that pretty well cut the ties. There is one friend I had back in high school, and her name was Lorraine Roberts. And she is still here. I see her occasionally in Albertsons. Well, we used to take a boat ride out on Utah Lake. And I was very sick. That old boat was just this way and this way. You had to be careful because that's a very shallow lake. And there have been a lot of people drown on that lake.
Okay. Who was the first boy you ever kissed?
Well, Joe Waite claims he kissed every girl in school, so I guess I was one of them. I was a very tall girl, and as you know, all of the boys like little tiny girls. So I didn't participate in many dances. But the short boys seemed to like me.
Did you date anybody at all? Like
Nothing serious like today. It's a completely different world.
How so?
Well, we just didn't get that entangled with each other. I mean, you went to a movie, so what? And that was about it. You just didn't get too enamored at that time. Well, the Second World War began, and we went into, what's it called? You couldn't get everything you wanted, and you had food stamps. I remember sugar and butter. And there were a few other things, but Yeah, you had to be careful, and you couldn't get gas. You had to have gas stamps, and but I don't know. I guess it was like a lot of kids. It didn't mean a great deal. We watched the news, but sometimes we did. But it was just something that was happening, and you lived through it.
If there's one thing you could change about your high school years, what would it be?
I would study harder. I would study harder. It's interesting. At that time, it was like, well, you get up and you graduate from high school. Some went on to college, some didn't. And then you got married. And I was not a good student. I have to tell you, I was not.
Did you go to college?
I did. I went part-time because I worked at the telephone company. And I worked at the telephone company for several years. But I had to pay for the school, and I went into a secretarial course, shorthand and that sort of thing, which they don't even recognize today. It's all on a computer, and you say something into a microphone, and then you give it to a secretary. But that I thought that was the shorthand. I loved the feel of that, and the way you had to do your curves and so forth. But I didn't. I met Doug at that time at school, and that was the end of that.
And what school did you go to?
BYU. Douglas came over as a what do you call it? They wanted these students to come in and learn about America, and then they were supposed to go back. Well, we met, and we decided to get married, and we eloped, and came back on Mother's Day. Wasn't that a great Mother's Day present? His name was Gert, G-E-R-T, Gert Stadelbauer. But that didn't go well in America because that was more of a girl's name. And he said to me one day, Gloria, I'm going to take the name Douglas. And from there on, I think he had it changed legally. I mean, it was still D.G. Stadelbauer. And I met him in a ski class on, well, it's Sundance now. But back then, I don't even remember what it was. And I met him on a ski class.
Was it Timp Haven at the time?
You what?
Was it Timp Haven?
Timp Haven. That's right. That's right. It was Timp Haven.
What did you do on your first date?
Well, I remember he was coming to pick me up at home. And Mother and Dad were there. And I said, please hurry and leave. I can't introduce this guy. I can't remember his last name. And so they obliged. But we went out and bought a car for me. And that was the beginning of his lifelong love of automobiles. And he could tell you every car and the model and when it was built and when it was out of style. He just had, according to his memory, and all of those cars, he dearly loved them, every one of them. I do remember I had this, it was a little two-seater something, and I pulled up in front of the house, my parents' house at that time, and we had gutters in front of the house, and people would put a board or something in there and let it come over and run over their lawn. And I left the car and it rolled down the hill and ended up in the gutter. I don't remember how I got that car out of there. But I apparently didn't put it in the right gear, so it just rolled down the gutter.
What first attracted you to him?
Well, he was tall and good looking. What else?
What was your courtship like?
Well, he said it to me when we got married. You know, Gloria, this is it. I'm glad I'm married because I'll always have someone to do something with. And that was very important to him, to have somebody that he could just say, come on, we're going to the automobile show to walk around for 3 or 4 hours.
How long after you met did you get married?
Oh, that's a bummer. It was very short. It was a very short time. Oh, yeah, he had a return date to get back to Germany. And after he got married, then he had to have someone vouch for him that he wouldn't become a dependent on the state. And Jack Eakins, my sister Janelle's husband, and his father owned the Triple E Quonset hut on the road going down into Provo. And they vouched for him that he wasn't a communist and wouldn't be a bad guy. And that was what we faced. And I don't know, we had to take someone with us when we went for his citizenship. And I don't remember much of that.
Did he have any funny quirks or mannerisms?
Yes, he wouldn't touch a rubber band for anything. That just turned him off. And we always kidded him about that, but he wouldn't do it. That is what he would not do.
What would you say the most important thing about choosing a spouse?
Don't be domineering. That's not a good idea. And keep a sense of humor. You know, you can do anything if you've got a little humor in your life. Doug could get I think he was probably homesick on and off, and he would get very sullen, but he would get over it, and you've got to keep a sense of humor, both of you. And I have to say, I enjoyed teasing him. I would pull jokes on him. He didn't appreciate it. He was serious about that, but that was why it was so fun. But he did the same to me several times, so.
What are some jokes you played on each other?
What?
What are some jokes you played on each other?
Well, I've got one right there in that closet, and I'm going to get it. It'll be just a minute. I bought this in.
Okay, sit down first.
I bought this in Salt Lake with Catherine one day in a nature store, and you put a battery in it, and when you pass by, it'll go, whoop, what did the frogs do? And anyway, I put that under the corner of his bed one day, and every time he went by, I don't know whether this works or not. So anyway, I put it under his bed, and pretty soon he came down the hall and he said, "Gloria, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm not doing anything." Of course, I couldn't keep a straight face. And so he said, "You come down here." And I went down to his room, and he started to look under his bed, but he didn't go down far enough. But soon he said, "What have you got in your hands, Gloria?" I said, "I haven't got anything." And he leaned over and pulled the cover off from the bottom of the bed there, and there was that frog. And he threw himself back. And I thought, boy, he could have had a heart attack. That wasn't what I was what I wanted. But he didn't like that frog at all. But there were a few others, but this was the big one. There were little things, but one day we were down at the lake, and he had this old boat that I've forgotten even how he got. It was very dangerous, but we were going to go out on the lake, and he said to me, "Gloria, jump up there and hold the rope." And so I jumped up holding the rope, and of course the boat backed off and I fell in the water, and he just roared. That was so funny to get Gloria all wet. Well, he was generous, and he worked hard. He had a good education, and he was just a good provider.
So tell me what you can remember about his life history.
Well, he was always very close to his German friends. Always. And he had a job that took him back to Germany frequently. And I went with him and met all of his friends, and they were nice. And an old girlfriend, they were kind of they called it the Pataclou. They had a little close-knit group, and this girl married George Allen, and Doug and George Allen became very close friends. They drove to work out on Long Island for years. And And then George Allen had a son, and he joined the company, and he always said that Doug helped him most of all.
Tell me about his childhood up to the point that you met him.
Well, as I said, Doug's mother and father separated, and finally, Doug got so depressed when his father would leave that his grandparents, whom his mother they were living with, just went to the authorities and said, "Please, we can't have this anymore." So they cut it off, and apparently after that, he didn't see much of his father, but they kept in touch, and then his mother and his father's second wife became very close friends, which I didn't understand at all. And but Doug and his mother lived in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, and Gudrun, which was the woman's name, she had 6 children, I think, if I remember right. But anyway, they'd exchange kids. Gudrun would send her kids down to Garmisch so they could play in the mountains, and Doug's mother would send him up to Dusseldorf for whatever was going on up there. But they became very good friends.
Did he go to college?
Yes, he did, until he got married. But he had a really good foundation in the German schools, and which he got along fine with doing what he did. He brought a little balancing machine from his grandfather's factory over here when he came. And I remember that little machine sitting out in the shed behind our house. And some reason he decided he'd sell that or something. But he took it, I think he took it into a garage. And of course your tires have to be balanced. And they would balance the tires on that little machine. And he finally sold it and joined the Kurt Orban company that imported industrial machinery. And he was with the Kurt Orban company from then on, wherever they went. And it was a good living.
Explain how the balancing machine works.
What?
Explain how the balancing machine works.
Well, if you don't, it's like putting a load in the washing machine. If you don't have it balanced, it goes thump, thump, thump. You have to even that out. And I remember once he was going to balance my sister Janelle's ceiling fan. And so he had this little piece of clay, is what they do. And they put that where the balance seems to be. And so he said to Janelle, "Turn the fan on, Janelle." And it started to go at a pretty good rate there. And all of a sudden, the little piece of clay fell off and hit somebody in the head. But that was the machine. Those were the machines that company built. That was his father's company. And I remember I threw them away. They were old books. And I kept thinking, where am I going to put them in that little duplex? And but anyway, they had a machine. It was as big as this twoplex here. It was huge. They had to drive to dig a pit to put that machine in, and then they had all kinds of safety things over the top. I think they had to put some kind of a net over that in case something flew off. And it was a huge thing. And all of these things that go in space, they have to be very accurately balanced, because you can't have a spaceship going thump, thump, thump. And they made those machines. Doug was a real good salesman.
Now he was part of the war. I don't know. Can you explain that? What happened there?
Well, they took the kids out of class, which was Doug's class, and made them go out and they were anti-aircraft guns, and the kids would just take them out and put them on, just keep going, and that's what they did. And I think it was shortly after that the war ended. But there was still very bad feelings from the Germans, bad sports of losing the war. And I remember his mother said to me once, "You know, they made us leave our homes when they came in." And I said, "Yes, Mother, and that's what the Germans did when they went in and took over a city." So we didn't discuss that type of thing anymore. But they had lots of rationing too. And in fact, they even had to ration the wood. And some people could have this tree, and some people could have this. And he said that that's how they heated their houses. And so anyway, I guess it was one of his girlfriends when the Americans came in. I guess they put on their best clothes. So this girl, she had gone into this factory or house or someplace, and there was a big barrel of sauerkraut. And so she was trying to get this, or somebody was trying to get this barrel of sauerkraut out of the window, and it fell. And it splashed sauerkraut all over her brand new suit, which she was very upset for. But they got along. In fact, I met one of the U.S. nurses. She lived here in Provo. And Doug saw her name in the paper one day, and he said, "I'm going to go visit her." And he did. And she reminded Doug, of the time that they had made a victory garden. And then the Americans were going to take it. They were going to take all of this hard work and take everything. And she found out about it. And so the day before the Americans came in, she had all of the Germans come in and take all of the food out for themselves. They had earned it. They took care of it and watered it and weeded it. And she was quite proud of herself. She was able to do that. My my oldest daughter was Catherine Jan Stadelbauer. And she weighed 1.5 pounds. And then my second daughter, I named Christine June Stadelbauer. And she didn't weigh as much as Catherine did. They went to school in Greenwich, Connecticut, and they graduated from, I don't know the name of the school, it was the high school, and then of course we started to send them off to school to the Brigham Young University. And there they met their husbands. Christy decided to go on a mission, and she went to Germany, and there she met her future husband, Christopher Bramhall. And Catherine, I don't know how she met her husband. His name was Jason Golden.
What are some special memories of raising your kids?
Special memories of what?
Of raising your children?
Well, Kathy she just has to have people around her. I took them to the beach one day, and before I even had my blanket down on the sand, Kathy comes back with about 6 little kids, and she said, "Mommy, these are my friends." And it just went on and on and on from there. She just has to have her friends. That's in her nature. Now, Catherine and Christine were pretty different. Christy was more reserved, and of course she went on her mission and had a successful mission, and Catherine didn't want to do that, but that's certainly up to Catherine. But they came out, and Kathy found another man to marry, Bob Allen, and that has been successful. And Christine came back and married the guy she met in Germany, Christopher Bramhall, and they had 6 children.
What is your proudest moment as a parent?
Well, there were very many. I mean, the girls did well in school, and of course, Christy went on a mission, and that was very successful. And they both had beautiful children, which was a great blessing to us all. And, well, I guess that's about it.
What did your family enjoy doing together?
Oh, we like to go off and go skiing. My daughter said, "Mother, is that what you do? Ski?" So, I knew I wasn't a hotshot skier, but Doug was a beautiful skier. I could look up on the mountain and I could point Doug out because of the way he skied. He was a good skier. And then he'd say to me, "Glo, follow me." And of course, the first thing I would do, I would get down there and fall all over. I had some pretty bad falls, too, trying to follow Douglas. But we did, and we took them back to Germany. We had, Douglas had business in Israel, and the people that belonged to this meeting group that Doug headed, the government would invite this group, the government would. And so we took the girls back, and they stayed with their grandmother in Germany, which she just loved having her granddaughters there. And we went on to Israel, and then we came back and picked the girls up and came on home. I think that Christy, while she was in Germany on a mission, she got to see her grandmother again. They gave her permission, the authorities, to see her grandmother, which I thought was nice.
What were some family rules you had?
Family rules?
Yeah.
Well, they were not supposed to date until a certain age. And we went to church. We had lots of friends in the church. And they liked to have slumber parties. And it was just things that they enjoyed doing. And we, of course, we lived on Long Island Sound, so we had a nice ferry boat, and it was a nice trip over to the island. And then I would take them down to the harbor and let them go on the ferry boat, and then they would come back at a certain time, and I would pick them up. And they enjoyed that. But that was the beginning of the drug culture. So you did have to be careful. But like one kid said to his mother, "Mother, you can buy drugs in the bathroom at school. What's the big deal?" But you did have to be careful. You did.
Tell me about my mom, and tell me a little about their personality and what you love and admire about her. What makes her special to you?
The what?
What makes her special to you?
For what?
What you love and admire about her?
My who?
Catherine.
Well, she was always... She just had a likable personality, is one thing. And there were many things. You know, when we would go out and shop or so, and I would buy something for Catherine, I always bought something for Christy. That's what two children will do. And you have to be careful and not overdo one from another. But Kathy was a likable person. And I have to say Christy was too, in her own way. You cannot judge one from another. In fact, I had a call from school once about Christy, and they said something about Catherine, and I said, do not compare them. They are absolutely individuals.
Okay, so what makes Christy special to you?
She's very loving and giving. And I have to say, she has been very good about coming. Christopher has an office here in Orem, and most of his time is in the Salt Lake office, but he comes down now and then, and Christy will come with him and spend the day with me, which I love. And she's been very, very good with having the kids home. She still has Andrew, and he will be getting married this fall. and Dana, who is in school, and Ryan, who's into everything. He wants to do everything. And then there's Maddie. So she still has a big house to take care of and kids to keep an eye on. And I've appreciated the time she spent with me. Well, it certainly has been a big part of our life. But I've just fallen off. I don't have the energy, and I have bad ankles, and I have bad shoulders. I can't get around like I would like to. But I do enjoy listening to the conferences. But that's as far as I can go.
What would you have done differently in your life if you'd known then what you know now?
I would have studied harder. I would have tried harder. You can always go back if you've got a good background in academia. You have to study hard. And that's what I regret most. I did not pay attention. I just like to be off doing something instead of studying. And that I have always regretted.
What is your philosophy of life?
I've always wanted to help if it was in my power to do so, and just be courteous and nice to other people.
Now for some advice for your great-grandchildren. What would you say to them about choosing and managing their careers?
Well, first of all, they're going to have to get a good education. That is first and foremost. And if you've got a good education, I even look at these people today who did not go on to college. But I found overall that they went back to school and studied and got a new profession. And I admire that. I admire that very much.
What advice would you give about money?
Be frugal. I don't think it's necessary to live like the Joneses. I think live within your budget. It doesn't matter how little it is. Put a little bit away and save. In fact, these young people today that have lost their job, I feel sorry for them because these are the years that they're to put them away for your retirement. And you've got to face the facts. You get old awful fast, and you've got to prepare for it. The government will never be able to take all of these people that they've spent these huge budgets on, the banks and all of this stuff. That you kids will be paying for that the rest of your life.
What would you have to say to them about love and marriage?
Well, I think I've pretty well covered that. Be kind and gentle to each other. Don't say things that will hurt their feelings, because those things spoken you can never take back. I think so much of the trouble comes today because our children were raised in a very affluent society, and they think they can go into marriage and have everything that their parents did that took their parents 40, 50, 60 years to get. You can't do that. You have to. And so many times it's just some little girl wants to go out and spend big. You can't do that. You cannot do that. Or I must say, sometimes a man does that. Just feels like, well, I made it and I'm going to spend it. Can't do it. Can't do it. Well, Dallas, I think my life has turned out better than I thought it would. And I think that was mainly with Doug's influence. I was just a little girl from a little town in Utah, and he took me back east, and it was just a whole different world. And then the children came, and of course I loved that. And it's better. It's better than I thought it was.